Okay, what's on your mind? Near the back, come on up.
Okay. How's that? Okay?
Good enough for me.
Okay. Hello. I wanted to go first because I'm afraid if I didn't go, I wouldn't go, and I wouldn't go tomorrow or the next day, and it'd be over. So I'm here now. And the other reason I'm up here is because I'm not allowed to talk to anybody. And so that leaves you.
I'm the only one you
Yes.
got. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm used to it. I'm
Okay.
generally the guy of last resort.
Yeah. So I want to go back to 101 because that's where I am. Mm-hmm. Spiritual 101. So I apologize to everybody else who could already answer these questions for me, but that's the way this is. The silence has been really difficult for me. And I'm surprised by it because I was really excited for it. Mm-hmm. I told all my friends I was going to sit somewhere for a week and be quiet and nothing going on. It's been horrible.
Yeah. Remember when I said to people who had been to retreat before, watch out what you expect because you'll probably get the opposite? You had an expectation without ever being on retreat before. And so we tend to get the opposite, actually, of what we expect.
And I know you have this planned out, and so far, so good. Well, really, I mean, the timing of your talks have been perfect because I have just enough time to drive myself absolutely crazy, and then you speak, and it calms me down. You make me laugh. You make me cry. You make me feel better about myself, and then you give me enough time to go crazy again. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, there's a method to the madness,
Yes.
friend.
So I'm getting to my question. So when I'm quiet or trying to be quiet, I'm just arguing with myself a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to do the meditation thing. I haven't really done that before.
Yeah.
And so I'm making it up.
Yeah.
And I'm arguing with myself about how to do it. And there's like a third voice in there who thinks he knows more than the other voice. And he's like, no, you're doing it wrong. You got to do it like this. I'm like, well, who the hell are you? And it's
That's the super ego.
Yeah. It was telling the ego to be
ego,
yeah.
right? Saying you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. You're not quite up to snuff with all this. Here, I know how to do it better.
Yes.
Yeah.
My mom's in there too.
Of course.
And it felt better. It felt, I don't know if anything was happening, but nothing bad was happening. I was okay.
Well, that can be something happening.
Yes.
Nothing happening actually comes as an extraordinary relief at a certain point.
Yeah.
Do you know?
And also in the silence, I'm here with my wife. Mm-hmm. This is our vacation. Mm-hmm. I don't get to talk to her, look at her, touch her, say hi. She's all about it. And that's also proven to be very hard. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. That's difficult for me.
Yeah,
and
I bet.
There's something I can look at about that.
I've had people spend their honeymoons here. Imagine that.
Yeah.
I do, and then they get here and it's like, not anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I find myself thinking about my kids and my wife a lot.
Yeah.
And that's separate from me. I've seen you once before. I've watched your videos. Granted, I have kids running around me. I'm not. That's about as much exposure I've had to this. And the first time I saw you, it changed my perspective on everything. Mm-hmm. And so, I've been waiting 2 years to see you again.
here we are.
Yeah, and I knew that something would happen.
What changed?
For me the first time?
Yeah.
The easiest way to explain it was I really fell in love with myself for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just through hearing you talk.
Mm-hmm.
And things started feeling okay about the stuff I didn't like.
Yeah. That's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
And it's lasted, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been good. So I was really looking forward to this week. I was like, oh, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. It is. You just don't know it yet.
I know. So,
like I said, it's true.
Yeah.
Sometimes the ease or the difficulty of a retreat is no indication of whether it's going well or not going well. When it's not easy, of course, it doesn't feel like it's going well. It doesn't feel like much is happening. You may feel like you're spinning your wheels. Sometimes people feel like they're going positively backwards. And yet, that's no indication. Like I said, sometimes people just feel like they're on cloud 9, but they're on cloud 9, but maybe nothing at all is actually happening.
Yeah. So why I'm talking to you now is I got a couple days left. So I'm asking Coach, what can you tell me to do for the next couple of days?
Okay. Good question. Well, the first thing, because it is the underlying orienting principle of the whole of my teaching. It's the entire underlying principle. You just play it out at deeper and deeper and deeper levels, depending on where you are. The underlying principle of the whole teaching has to do, the focal point of it is always your own sense of yourself, your own self-identity. That's what it all turns around. The reason that that's where it all turns around, because that's where everybody's life pivots around their identity. Do you know what I mean? And so instead of, trying to unify our identity with a higher principle, which is one way of going about it, or to all these different ways of dealing with it, this is all really a way of looking very directly at our sense of being, our sense of ourself, and getting underneath the debris. And the debris at times can appear quite noisy, because it's useful to give our apparent self, give it its due in the sense that this is disturbing for it, right? It's frightened of this. This is not great news for it. I mean, ultimately, it's fantastic news. It's everything it really wants. It wants to be at peace. It wants to be at rest. It doesn't want to fight itself. It doesn't want to criticize, be so self-critical, as well as projecting that out onto the world. It's actually everything it wants, but at the same time, it finds that what it wants, it's frightened of. And that's where all the activity comes from that sort of conscious or unconscious fear, As one person, as a wise man once said many years ago, all of humanity's problems boil down to man's inability to be in a room by himself for very long without driving himself crazy. And so this is aversion, even though we have lots of company. In a certain sense, you're in a room alone, right? Mm-hmm. The silence will make it feel that way, even though there's lots of company. Yeah, there is company, but you're also alone, right?
Mm-hmm. Very.
Because really, the reason for just the silence is we're just no longer distracting ourselves from what's happening, right? So what you're noticing isn't happening anew. It's what's actually going on almost all the time. It's just that now there's nothing to distract yourself with it. And so you notice it, you feel it, right? So when you remember that the whole aim of this always comes down to our identity. The egoic part of our identity, what it wants spirituality to be all about, is it wants it to be about managing our state. Right? So, and I hesitate to say this because then someone's going to be afraid to ask about it. It's okay to ask about it. But it's the reason why for spiritual teachers, 95 out of every 100 questions are some question of how do I manage my state? And our ego wants it to be about how I manage my state because that's all it's about, right? That's what the ego does. It goes to movies to manage its state. It eats food to manage its state. At least in the West, because we have very little concept of when we're full. So we eat until our state changes, not until our body's full. So everything we do is a way to change our state. So, first of all, I'm glad to hear because can be really useful when you begin to have some deeper sense of just allowing your humanity, your humanness, as strange or crazy as it might get in your mind at certain times, that you actually just allow it to be the way it is, to not criticize the critic. Do you know what I mean? You may not be able to get rid of the critic, but you can stop criticizing yourself for having a critic. So it's just letting the darn thing be. Having some compassion, even love, understanding for it, because it's just when you really feel it, it's sort of like a lost child in a forest. It's just looking for some orientation. And then it comes to something like this, and it's quiet, and its orientation is almost always distraction, and so it can't find anything. So it turns on itself, It just turns on itself. And you can't control that from happening, The more you try to make it not happen, the more it happens. But to see it like it is, it's like a lost child in the forest. It just does what lost children do. They run around, they panic, they bump into trees, they get very disoriented. They don't know up from down, So first of all, you just have some basic just understanding. Like, of course it's that way.
Can I add to my question then?
Yep.
So that's kind of what I took from your talk this morning. And then I did that, and I was doing that all day today. And what would happen is I'd fall asleep immediately. Mm-hmm. Like I'd shut my eyes and be like, okay, say whatever you want to say, all the things. And I'm out.
Okay. That's okay.
Okay.
That's all right. It's so when there's two reasons. I always ask people when they tell me they're falling asleep. The first question I ask is always the practical question. So how'd you sleep last night? So how do you sleep generally? Because a lot of people, especially people with children, come to retreats extraordinarily sleep deprived.
I could be slightly.
Yeah. They don't even know it. Do you know what I mean? And then you come to retreat, and half the people at this retreat are probably laying in their bed half of every night awake instead of asleep. Anybody? Insomnia is one of the most common things that happen at a retreat. It just has to do often with the intensity of the environment and the energy. So it can be just part of, you in a certain sense, you kind of soothe the ego, soothe that mind, and then, then you can actually feel, oh, geez, I'm actually really exhausted, and you just might nod off. That's one reason. The other reason can also be that to go to sleep is one of our most unconscious but common defense mechanisms. I remember many years ago when I was going through my official Buddhist ceremony, where it's called Jukai, where you become a Buddhist and take the precepts and all that kind of stuff. And my parents were at that. And it was at the very last day of a retreat. And so there's a ceremony going on with those of us who are doing it, this sort of ritual ceremony. And, people are sort of watching and stuff. And afterwards, we're outside and just talking, and teacher comes up to my parents and said, "So how was it? What do you think about it? How was it for you?" And my mom said, "I thought it was absolutely beautiful and wonderful, but I kept going to sleep." She goes, "I just couldn't keep my eye. I'd open up, and then it was wonderful, and then I'd like go to sleep, and then I open my eyes and go, this is lovely, and then I go to sleep." And really, like casually, this is the teacher that my teacher sent me to do these retreats, and he said to my mom very simply, he goes, "Yeah, the conditioned mind will do that." You know, it just like slipped it in there real easy. Yeah. The conditioned mind will do that. You know, even when you really like it, it might just go to sleep because you're tired. So,
okay.
So don't fight it, because fighting it won't help. You know, always remember, to fight against yourself is always going to be counterproductive. That, however, doesn't mean therefore then you indulge in all your nonsense. It just means you're not fighting against it. You're not pushing against it. Like I said, you're seeing it for what it really is, like a lost child in a forest. You know, that's all it is. And it gets spooked easy, and it gets frustrated easy, and sometimes it gets angry easy, and gets confused easy, and it's all, like I said, a lost child in the forest. So, and when you can, for moments, when the struggle's not there, or it's relaxed a little bit, then you can remember, oh, this is about my sense of myself, right? Getting underneath all the judgments, all the opinions, the whole belief structure, the whole sense of self you inherited from family and culture and education, and all the ways that we acquire a more and more denser sense of self, more and more defined sense of who we are, right? And the key is to actually look at actual experience instead of in concept, you know? What am I when I don't think about myself? What am I then? And your mind can go, let me see, I don't know. And then, we're looking for the right answer. Whereas a spiritual inquiry, it's not meant to get the right answer, actually. If you get the right answer, you got it wrong, right? Spiritual inquiry is meant to take your mind, and bring it down into actual experience, right? So what is underneath this whole turmoil? Do you know, what's the experience? What is the direct experience of that which is having all the experience? Even if you really follow it, if you're not trying to get the right answer, which is the key to inquiry, it's not a test. It's not like being in school. When you follow it, you actually get the answer every single time you ask the question.
And feel the answer.
It's there every single time. For most people, it takes several hundred times before they notice what they were given the first time. Mm-hmm. And then when they notice what they were given the first time, they go, oh, do you know? But it's not because it was given anew, it's because they just realized it for the first time. Do you know? As an example, when you turn that awareness back, even if you say something, because you can language it different ways, but if you just looked at it and you just followed it, okay, what am I? And in a brief instant, what am I? And there it is. It's not an answer in your mind, right? Mm-hmm. So often people, when I really guide people there, they go, first they go, I don't know. And because they're still trying to get the answer. And then I say, no. What did you experience that caused your mind to say, I don't know? Even if you say, I don't know, you said, I don't know for a reason. When you really slow it down, you realize your mind said, I don't know, because you thought you were going to find, that you were supposed to find something, right? Namely yourself. Whatever that might be.
After you asked that question, that's the first moment my mind was really quiet.
That's right. Because that's the question worked, in other words. And that split instant, it's completely free of any identity, isn't it? It's just quiet, awake, space. It's right there, isn't it? Every single time. Which time will we kind of notice it and get that moment of, oh, that? Couldn't be that. You know, maybe it is. And all the turmoil that goes on, that is our deeply unconscious fear and attempt to not notice this. That's what it's all about. That's what I mean when I say it's all just about, treading water on the void. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dancing around the void, talking about it and philosophizing about it and sitting around it.
It's much safer.
It's very safe.
Yeah.
It's very safe. But then in a single instant, there it is.
Well, I'm glad I asked you now instead of on Friday.
I'm glad you did too.
And I'm going to sit down, but I want to ask one more thing. You could say no. Is there any way I can have 5 minutes a day to hug and kiss my wife?
I'm going to let you answer that question. Okay?
You mean my wife's going to answer that question?
She will. Yeah, both of you will answer it. 'Cause the reason I say is because I'm not anybody's parent.
Yeah, I know.
Do you know? I mean, if somebody's disturbing each other and they're refusing to be silent, then I'll be their parent and I'll kick them the hell out of here. But besides that, you just follow that thing that really seems true in you. I'm not the kind of teacher that wants to be that for you. I leave you to your own, what feels it in integrity and truth for you. Okay?
I know.
I trust that as much as I trust you or anything else.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And just before I go to the next question, I just want to add there's another part to all this that is a really intimate part of it, is about spirituality, that about our own coming into full realization of what we are, is that there is a huge amount of what unfolds that the truth of the matter is simply not manageable. There are times when you simply cannot manage your experience. Does that make sense? No matter what I say, it might work good now, it might be functional for a while, it might not be, you never know. But there will come times when you'll be having some experience and it will be not manageable. You won't be able to get out of it, you won't be able to strategize around it, you won't be able to do any spiritual thing with it, you'll just be unavoidably stuck with it. Do you know? And those moments are very, very important moments too. Those moments when nothing seems to be occurring. Do you know, when you are faced with your complete sort of helplessness and impotency in terms of managing experience. Because at those moments, underneath, sort of deep in the unconscious, this one self is being, if you wanted to be nice about it, dissolved. If you wanted to be realistic about it, crushed. annihilated, do you know? And that's what's actually happening. You can't manage, you can't alter your experience, you can't shift it into another perspective or of a dimension, and you think something, that it's something terrible is happening. But even though at times to be able to make shifts is very useful and can be very powerful, in the end, the very thing that's doing the shifting, that wants to do the shifting, that wants to do the managing, that is self. That is self's constant effort to not be where it is, to constantly be in control. And if you boil down all of spirituality to one simple principle, it would be having all sense of control yanked out of your little hands. That's what it's about. That's really what it's about. And you'll go through this, for as long as you go through this. But most people go through many different levels of this, far after they have some awakening, because then the little control comes back and tries to hold on to it, and then they ask teachers, how do I get it back? And when I get it back, how do I hold on to it? And how can I go from non-abiding to abiding awakening? And it's all, it's the little controllers still in there trying to manage. I want to be in that enlightened state all the time. That's what I want. And and that's not any different from the kids saying, I want a ding-dong or a ho-ho, and getting pissed off when they don't get it. You see? We think it's different because it's spiritual, and we want enlightenment. I'm not wanting that ho-ho, I'm wanting truth. But you notice your system can get upset in the very same way. I don't get what I want. No, I'm really upset. I can't manage. I'm not in control. And one of the underlying dynamics is that sense, the effort, the thing that desires control gets worn out of your system. Sometimes parts of it get blasted out of your system through revelation. You just see through it and it drops. Sometimes parts of it get sort of torn out of your system, and it's like a mask being torn down, and it's painful and it's difficult and it's trying, and there's many ways where this illusion of control gets pulled away from us. And that's, if you simplify the dynamic of what awakening is, it is about revelation and realization and waking up. It has this realization component, which is beautiful and wonderful and light and revealing and freeing and lovely, and that's what everybody's after. But also the dirty little secret underneath all that, it is about what it's always been about. The disillusion of self, the disillusion of that which is trying to control. That's what it's about. It's always been about that. It always will be about that. Revelations and awakenings and insights can help with that tremendously. But usually it's not all done on the level of insight. There's parts of it that you just live through when nothing seems to be going the way you want it. Nothing. And you're, bereft. And you think you're wasting your time, and however you might react to that. And later, you will look back at some point. You look back at the whole play of illusion, and even ego, and the desire to hold and grasp and control. You look back on that very force with the greatest of fondness, and the greatest appreciation, and the deepest of gratitude, because it was that very force that actually propelled you into the fullness of what you really are. So illusion and confusion, and these aren't your enemies. At some point you see that the forces of Maya, the forces of illusion are, they're like God's little secret helper. But not nice. Okay. You get the sense? Come on up there. I call that the dirty little secret because almost, nobody, I think almost no teacher even wants to admit, there's certain things that you're all going to go through that I can't help you with. That I can't do hocus pocus, I can't wave my wand, and even if I could, I wouldn't. There's certain things you go through that you're just going to go through. And just the going through them is sometimes exactly what's called for. To have that self broken down is exactly sometimes what's called for. And sometimes it's absolutely unavoidable. And that's just the way things are, And so we play games pretending like it is avoidable. We have little tricks to make sure that never happens, where we're doing it individually, or teachers are always trying to shift their students' state into a better place, But I've never forgotten one of the 2 or 3 things my teacher said to me when she asked me to teach. The first thing she said is, be very careful of how much suffering you remove from somebody, because you may be removing their real shot at enlightenment. It doesn't mean don't ever help them. It doesn't mean don't ever remove it. It means don't be very, very aware of removing people's suffering, because that suffering plays a very important role. It's something we don't like to acknowledge. Most of us, if we look back over our lives, we've taken many of our greatest leaps in consciousness, our greatest leaps in awareness, through extraordinarily difficult circumstance. We're usually not walking through Disneyland, having a great time, and, go, oh. Often, it's through wrenching times, that can be it doesn't have to be that way, but it's just that plays a very important part in one's awakening also. And so sometimes we're trying to mitigate the very energy, the very force that actually is trying to awaken us. And once you get onto that, you stop resisting so much. You stop thinking that when things feel good, that means I'm at a higher place, and when they feel rotten, that means I'm at a lower place. You stop seeing the world that way. You stop seeing your experience that way. You start to align with, do you know how things feel at any given moment isn't necessarily a very accurate, indication of whether what's happening is useful or useless. Thanks for your little indulgence there. Hi.
Hi.